For nearly 11 years, I believed my marriage was the safest place in my life. My wife, Anna, wasn't just the woman I married, she was my confidant, my companion, the person who could make a quiet Sunday morning feel like something sacred. We built routines that made us feel steady, cooking together on Fridays, long walks on the weekends, late-night conversations about work, dreams, even small frustrations. It wasn't perfect, no marriage is, but I had always thought our bond was stronger than any storm that might come. Looking back now, I see how much I held on to that belief, almost like a shield. I told myself love was enough. That trust was unshakable. That Anna and I were solid, but slowly, almost invisibly, cracks began to form. At first, I didn't want to see them. The first signs were so small they almost slipped past me. Anna had always been attentive, the kind of woman who asked about my day with genuine interest, who laughed easily at my jokes, even when they weren't particularly funny. But one evening, I noticed she seemed distracted. Her eyes would drift to her phone when I spoke, her smile thinner than usual, as if part of her was elsewhere. At first, I told myself it was stress. Work had been weighing on her, deadlines piling up, and she often came home drained. I didn't question it. Every marriage has seasons where one person carries a heavier load. Still, I couldn't ignore the way her late nights at the office became more frequent. Or how she guarded her phone with a subtle caution that hadn't been there before. It was nothing concrete, just a feeling, the kind of instinct you brush aside because you don't want to sound paranoid. But that feeling began to follow me like a shadow. I started to notice the changes stacking up, like puzzle pieces I didn't want to put together. Anna, who once left her phone on the kitchen counter without a thought, now carried it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. When a notification buzzed, she'd glance at it quickly, then flip the screen face down. Her excuses for staying late at work grew vaguer. Just a project, she'd say, or the team needed me. When I asked for details, her answers were clipped, her patience thin, as if my curiosity was a burden. Nights felt different too. She used to curl against me in bed, whispering little stories from her day. Now, she often turned away, saying she was too tired. The warmth between us, physical and emotional, began to cool, though I tried to convince myself it was temporary. Still, there was a gnawing inside me, a quiet suspicion I buried under layers of trust. Because the alternative, that Anna might be drifting into someone else's arms, was too painful to face. It happened on an ordinary Thursday evening. I had come home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise Anna with dinner already on the stove. She wasn't back from work yet, and as I set the table, her phone buzzed on the counter. She must have forgotten to take it with her this time. I told myself not to look. For years, I believed in respecting her privacy, in trusting without proof. But something in me, that gnawing instinct I'd been silencing for weeks, pushed my hand forward. The screen lit up. A message preview glowed in the dim kitchen light. It wasn't a friend, or a coworker, or anything that could be mistaken for innocent. It was a man's name I didn't recognize, followed by words that sliced through me like glass. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? My chest tightened. My breath caught. I stood frozen, staring at the screen, as if the longer I looked the more it might rearrange into something else, something harmless. But it didn't. It stayed. Proof that my doubts weren't paranoia at all, they were the truth I had been afraid to face. I don't remember how long I stood there in the kitchen, staring at that glowing screen. The room felt suddenly too quiet, the clock ticking on the wall almost unbearable. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone and swiped it open. The thread of messages stretched back for weeks, maybe months. Flirtatious words, inside jokes I had never heard, the kind of tender language Anna once reserved only for me. And then there it was, written in blunt, undeniable text. Last night was amazing. I can't stop reliving it. My stomach dropped. The air felt thick, impossible to swallow. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't just late nights or guarded looks. It was real. Anna, my wife, the woman I had loved with everything in me, Was sharing a part of herself, body and soul, with someone else. That I put the phone back exactly where I had found it, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The fragile shell of trust that I had clung to had shattered, and the pieces cut deep. Anna came home not long after. I remember the sound of her keys at the door, the familiar jingle that used to make me feel safe. This time, it felt like a warning bell. She walked in, smiling faintly, carrying a takeout bag as if it were any other night that I watched her set it on the counter, humming softly to herself. For a moment, I almost convinced myself to stay silent, to pretend I hadn't seen anything, to push the truth back into the shadows where it had been hiding. But the weight in my chest was too heavy. "Anna," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. She looked up, her eyes soft, but something in my tone must have caught her. "What is it?" she asked, her smile fading. That I swallowed hard. "I know." She froze, her body rigid, the takeout bag slipping slightly in her grip. "Know what?" she whispered, though her face betrayed her. The color drained from her cheeks, her lips parting as if she were searching for a script that didn't exist. The silence between us was louder than any argument. I repeated, steady this time, "I saw the messages." Her hand loosened, and the takeout bag slid onto the counter with a dull thud. For a second, she just stood there, staring at me as if I had spoken a language she didn't understand. Then her eyes filled with tears, sudden, overflowing, raw. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. The first words out of her mouth were, "I'm sorry." They tumbled out in a rush, over and over, until they blurred together. That I stayed silent, waiting. Finally, she admitted it, said it had started innocently, just conversations with someone at work, someone who understood her. She insisted she never meant for it to go this far, that she was lonely and confused. The words felt like excuses, fragile explanations that shattered as soon as they hit the air. And then, the truth I dreaded, yes, they had crossed the line. Not just messages, not just emotional connection, they had slept together. She reached for me then, hands trembling, eyes pleading. "You're my world," she said through sobs. "I love you, I don't want to lose you." But all I could hear was the echo of those texts, all I could see was the life she had shared with someone else. I thought I would explode, shout, rage, demand answers that could never satisfy me. But when the confession finally left her lips, all that fire burned out before it even reached the surface. Instead, I felt hollow. My body heavy, my mind strangely quiet, as if it had shut down to protect me from the impact. I sat at the table, hands resting on the wood, staring at nothing while Anna cried across from me. Her sobs filled the kitchen, but they sounded far away, muffled, like I was underwater. That I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask how many times, or where, or why. My silence seemed to terrify her more than anger would have. She kept talking, throwing words into the void, promises, apologies, explanations that blurred together. Inside me, everything felt suspended. I couldn't even begin to process the depth of what I'd heard. I only knew that the foundation of my life had cracked wide open, and nothing would fit back the same way again. That night stretched on endlessly. When Anna finally went to bed, I stayed in the living room, staring at the shadows on the wall. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt hostile, every corner heavy with memories that suddenly felt tainted. Waves of emotions came in relentless cycles. Shock would hit me first, a numb disbelief that this was actually my life. Then anger surged in, hot and sharp, making me want to break something, to punish someone, her, him, even myself for not seeing it sooner. But the anger never lasted. It melted into grief, a heavy sadness that wrapped itself around my chest until it was hard to breathe. That I thought about our vacations, our inside jokes, the times I caught her looking at me with what I thought was love. Were those moments real? Or were they part of a story I had written for myself, blind to the truth? Worst of all was the shame. I felt humiliated, like I was the last to know a secret the whole world could already see. My mind spun with imagined whispers, faces of friends and family shaking their heads at my naivety, and through it all, one thought cut deeper than the rest: why wasn't I enough? The days that followed blurred together, each one heavy with unspoken tension. Anna tried to talk, she hovered near me, offered explanations, begged for a chance to make it right. But I had no words left. Silence was all I could give her. We still moved around each other in the same house, but it felt like we were strangers inhabiting the same space. Meals were eaten in near quiet. Nights were worse, lying in the same bed but miles apart, the weight of betrayal pressing down between us. Sometimes I would get up and sleep on the couch, unable to bear her nearness, yet unable to leave entirely. Every sound, every glance, every ordinary moment was charged with something broken. I found myself studying her face, wondering how I had missed it, the secrets, the distance, the loneliness she claimed had driven her into another man's arms. That I was waiting, I think, waiting for clarity, waiting for a feeling that would tell me what to do. But all I felt was exhaustion, like my heart was carrying a weight it couldn't put down. It finally happened over breakfast, several days after the silence had stretched to its breaking point. I was sitting at the table, pushing food around my plate, while Anna scrolled through her phone. The sight of it, that small screen that had carried the truth of her betrayal, made something snap inside me. "We can't keep living like this," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the quiet like glass. Anna looked up, startled. Her eyes were swollen from nights of crying, her face pale. "I know," she whispered. She set the phone down, almost as if in surrender. What followed was a flood. She begged again, promised therapy, swore she would end things with him, delete his number, block him forever. She said she still loved me, that I was her home, her family, her everything. That I listened, but the words felt empty, like echoes in a hollow room. I wanted to believe her, a part of me ached for it, but trust is not something that can be rebuilt on promises alone. That I told her as much. "You broke something in me, Anna. I don't know if it can be fixed." Her tears started again, but I didn't move to comfort her. For the first time in our marriage, I kept my distance. That evening, I called my brother. My voice was shaking as I told him everything, the words spilling out in a rush I hadn't been able to release with Anna. He listened quietly, then said something that stayed with me: "You have to think about what's best for you, not what's easiest for her." It was the clarity I needed. I couldn't keep circling the same pain, trapped in the same house, suffocated by broken trust. Staying felt like slowly drowning. Leaving, though terrifying, felt like the only way to breathe again. That I told Anna that night. She sobbed, clutched at my arm, begged me to reconsider. She promised change, begged for time. But my decision had already solidified. "I need space," I said. "I need to save myself before I lose who I am in this." The next day, I packed a bag and drove to my brother's place. Carrying those bags out of the house, seeing Anna standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her face, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But deep down, I knew staying would have been harder. The first night away was strange, the quiet in my brother's guest room both a relief and a reminder of what I'd lost. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling both lighter and unbearably heavy. Lighter, because the constant tension in the house was gone. Heavy, because the reality of separation had set in. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the storm inside me began to settle. The anger flared less often, though sadness still came in sharp waves. I missed the life Anna and I had built, the rituals, the comfort of companionship, even the simple sound of her voice in the house. But I didn't miss the lies. I didn't miss the weight of suspicion pressing down on me every moment that I started to notice small things: how much more easily I could breathe, how food tasted better when my stomach wasn't tied in knots, how laughter with my brother felt genuine instead of forced. Healing hadn't arrived yet, but space had given me something precious: room to exist without pretending. As the weeks passed, I found myself looking back over my marriage with new eyes. I realized how often I had ignored my instincts, how quickly I dismissed the unease that crept in when Anna's behavior began to change. I told myself trust meant silence, that love meant overlooking the cracks. But trust, I learned, isn't about closing your eyes, it's about openness, honesty, and choosing each other every day. That I also learned something about myself. For years, I believed my worth was tied to being a good husband, to keeping the marriage intact no matter what. When Anna strayed, my first question was, why wasn't I enough? But slowly, I began to understand that her choices were not a reflection of my inadequacy. They were her choices, born of her own loneliness, her own failings, her own search for something outside of what we had. The hardest truth was this: love alone isn't enough to protect a marriage. Without respect, honesty, and faithfulness, love withers. And once trust is broken, no amount of tears or promises can restore it to what it once was. Looking back now, I see my marriage as both a gift and a wound. A gift, because for many years I truly loved Anna and shared moments that shaped who I am. A wound, because betrayal leaves scars that never quite fade. Yet even wounds teach us, about resilience, about boundaries, about what we deserve. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone who finds themselves where I was, it's this: trust your instincts. Don't silence that quiet voice inside you out of fear of what it might say. And if betrayal does come, remember that healing isn't about fixing the person who hurt you, it's about protecting the person you are. Leaving Anna was the hardest decision of my life, but it was also the one that set me free. I walked away not because I stopped loving her, but because I finally started loving myself enough to choose truth over illusion. And that, I suppose, is the lesson I carry forward. Sometimes love means holding on, but sometimes the bravest kind of love is letting go.